Expect a little bit of mystery, some taboo energy, truths being revealed and secrets being uncovered. And then not to mention that, put a whole bunch of emotional intensity on top of that. That is the essence of the energy of the upcoming full moon in Scorpio. Now, while it may be an intense event and it may bring up shadows that you would rather not address, this kind of energy is necessary. Not only is it cathartic in a way, it allows us to see the truth and it allows us to clean up a little bit, which is really what we're going to be doing most of with this full moon in Scorpio. So in this video, I'll be discussing everything you need to know about the upcoming full moon in Scorpio and what you can do to make the most of it. So stick around, you definitely don't want to miss this. Hello, my loves. As always, I hope that this video finds you well and in excellent spirits. If this is our first time meeting, welcome. My name is Mel. I'm a professional astrologer, and I'm the founder of divinefeminineworks, where I help people unlock their divinity and discover their magic. And as always, if you are returning, welcome back. So this video is all about the upcoming full moon in Scorpio, going down on Tuesday, April 23rd at 7:48 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So first and foremost, let's all take a collective sigh of relief. Because we are finally out of eclipse season. Now, earlier this month, we had a new moon solar eclipse in Aries, which definitely snatched our wigs off. And thankfully, we've concluded eclipse season, hopefully unscathed. And now we have just a regular full moon, all right? And this particular full moon is going down in the sign of Scorpio. So, you know the deal. Full moons are all about illumination and culmination. They're the halfway point in the lunar cycle, and they represent when our manifestations come to fruition. Typically, I use the example of an apple seed. The apple seed would be planted at the new moon phase, and at the full moon phase, you have a fully formed apple that you can now enjoy. It's culmination, it's illumination, right? And illumination is really the keyword for this particular full moon. Scorpio is a sign that is dark, energy that is dark, things that are hidden underneath the surface. And so this full moon is going to shed light on things that not only have been hidden, but secrets, taboo information, and also things that we may deem a little unsavory or things that are just like ugly, right? It's sort of the raw truth that is coming to light with this particular full moon. And Scorpio is a water sign, and it is a sign that is ruled by both Mars and Pluto. So it has this fiery element to it, hence Mars, but it also has this very deep and intense energy to it that it gets from Pluto. Scorpio also represents the underworld. So when I said, this full moon may bring light to things that are unsavory, things that typically tend to dwell underneath the surface or the underbelly of society may see the light of day with this particular full moon. Okay, so it's gonna be intense, especially because Scorpio is a water sign dealing with our emotions. So this may be a full moon that brings up your repressed emotions, as if we haven't had enough of that already with the past eclipse energy, right? So the party kind of keeps on going. However, the one thing I love about this particular full moon is that it allows us to purge what no longer serves us. And this is going to be very important as it pertains to one particular area of life that I believe is going to affect all of us. All right. So without further ado, let's get into the details. But as always, we start with the basics. All right. In terms of basics, there isn't too much to mention here that I haven't mentioned already. So typically in this part of the video, I like to talk about full moon energy generally and Scorpio energy generally, which I think I already did. But to recap, if you skipped through the intro, which I hope you didn't, full moons are about illumination or culmination. It's the midway through the lunar cycle, all right? So you'll either find that during full moons, things become illuminated to you, especially things that have been hidden. And or this may be things coming to fruition, things coming to a completion, things coming to a grand crescendo in your life. All right. That's full moon energy. And then Scorpio is all about the hidden. It's all about the mysterious. It's all about the taboo, right? It can encompass a lot of dark energy, a lot of intense energy. So things such as power, control, power struggles, ego conflicts, things like the occult, mysteries, taboos, things like astrology, psychology, underworld kind of things like violence, anger, crime. Those are all of the things that are governed by Scorpio. So these are kind of the themes that may play out with this full moon. But I want you to keep this in mind. If there's nothing else that you take from this video, take this. This full moon is about purging. The thing with Scorpio energy is that it shows you the ugliness. It shows you the rot so that you can address it and remove it. Things like bad habits, obsessions, manipulation, possessiveness, jealousy. Those are also Scorpio energy signature things, right? But it's not just to say, okay, I'm jealous and that's it. Or yeah, I have this, addiction to nicotine. Let me not say addiction. Addiction isn't necessarily the realm of Scorpio, but I have this bad habit of smoking, right? It's not just enough to recognize it. It's to eradicate it. It's to remove it, right? You get down to the truth of the matter, the heart, the essence of a situation, no matter how beautiful or ugly, so that you can ameliorate it and transform it. Transformation. That is the key word for Scorpio energy. So whatever's becoming illuminated at this full moon, even whatever is coming to a culmination is ultimately in alignment with transformation for you. That is why Scorpio energy is so intense. It is transformative and transformation on a profound and permanent level. So whatever is revealed at this full moon, you can't go back to when you didn't know it. Or whatever is changing in your life, it is changing irrevocably, hopefully for the better. So although this is not an eclipse, the energy of this full moon will undoubtedly be intense and life-altering. And I don't mean that lightly, but I also don't mean that in a way to make you scared. This is the full moon where you can make serious changes in your life, all right? So now that we've talked about the basic energy, let's talk about the numerology related to this full moon. I love examining the numerology because it always gives us a little more information about what's going on. So in terms of numerology, we look to the degree of that full moon or any sort of planetary placement. We would look at the degree and then examine the numerology. So this particular full moon in Scorpio is going down at the 4th degree of Scorpio. So this full moon in numerology speak is sponsored by the number 4. So 4 has a lot to do with stability. It has a lot to do with fixed energy. Not just that, it has a lot to do with building and with work. 4 is the number of builders, right? It's the number of putting forth work in order to facilitate stability and a foundation, right? So when it comes to the energy of this full moon in Scorpio, I feel like your sense of stability and security are going to be highlighted. Whether it's you finding out something and becoming illuminated or enlightened, or whether you are finishing something up or something is coming to fruition, it ultimately will have something to do with your stability and your security. So it may have something to do with your work, with your career. It may have something to do with your money. All of these things speak to stability and security. So I wouldn't be surprised if any of those things in your life are highlighted at this full moon, okay? Now, full moon. The number 4 also tends to be practical and logical. So even though Scorpio is a water sign and has a lot to do with our emotions, right? And our emotions can be erratic, they can be intense. Because of the presence of the energy of the number 4, there is going to be this facet of logic and this practicality, right? You may be feeling a lot intensely. However, I feel like your mind and your logic is going to step in and help you process whatever it is that you're feeling, okay? And even if you don't find that that is the case, you may want to take some time to take a step back from whatever is happening and take a logical, more practical approach to whatever situation is transpiring. Okay. Now, in terms of astrology, the number 4 is associated with the sign of Cancer. Now, even though Cancer is also a water sign, it has to do with our emotions and our intuition and everything in our inner world. The number 4, as expressed with Cancer energy, has a lot to do with security, right? Because when you think of the symbolism of Cancer, it is the crab. Soft on the inside, but very hard on the outside. Cancer will go really hard to secure what it is nurturing. So perhaps maybe you are learning the truth about something in your life that you are nurturing, that you tend to be kind of sensitive about. You'll also defend this thing and keep thieves and any other kind of negative energy out because of the presence of the energy of the number 4. Now, in astrology, well, let me say this, the number 4 also correlates to the planet Uranus in astrology as well. So even though 4 is fixed and it's stable, it represents Uranus, which is about rebellion and change. This is really important because, like I said, Scorpio has a lot to do with transformation. So there may be a change to something stable and fixed in your life at this full moon, which can be jarring, but ultimately is leading you to a sense of freedom. All right, so keep that in mind. Now, one of the other things I look at when I am examining the numerology for a particular full moon or new moon is what is known as the Sabian symbols. And the Sabian symbols give an archetypal story for each degree of the zodiac. So the Sabian symbol for 4 degrees of Scorpio is a massive rocky shore resists the pounding of the sea. And this goes back to what I was saying before about how Scorpio is intense, right? It's intense emotional energy. Whereas the number 4 is stable and secure. So in this particular Sabian symbol, the pounding of the sea represents that Scorpio energy, that energy of emotion, of intense emotion that may be elicited when you find out something, when you find out the truth of a matter or the ugliness of a situation, or even if you accomplish something, complete something, or there is an ending at this full moon, it'll definitely elicit an emotional response. Whereas the energy of the number 4 is stable and logical, and that represents a massive rocky shore, right? You may even find it difficult to fully express how you're feeling at this full moon because your logic may get in the way. And that can be a little troublesome, right? Because emotions are meant to be felt in their entirety, as uncomfortable as that may be. So resist the urge to try to reduce everything to logic. That's not to say that you shouldn't carry your common sense with you and use your common sense at this time, but allow yourself to feel whatever you're feeling at this full moon. That is going to be very, very important. So there's this juxtaposition of intense emotional energy and logic that this full moon in Scorpio is going to provide to us. So definitely interesting nonetheless. All right, so now that we talked about the numerology, let's get into the astrology and see what's going on in the sky during this full moon in Scorpio. All right. So astrologically speaking, there isn't much going on in the sky at the time of this full moon. However, there are 2 things that I want to highlight. Number 1 is the astrology of the full moon in general, and number 2 is Pluto. So first and foremost, let's talk about full moons and the astrology of full moons. So full moons are when the sun and the moon are in opposition. Think of it as a seesaw. The sun is on one end, the moon is on the other. Full moons highlight extremes in our lives, and they sort of foster this energy of trying to achieve balance wherever the energies of this full moon are playing out for you. And of course, that would depend on your natal chart. So if we have a full moon in Scorpio, it means that the sun is in Taurus. All right. So the time that I'm filming this video, we're still in Aries season. However, Taurus season is about to start in a couple of days. So as soon as Taurus season hits, boom, we have a full moon in Scorpio. Now, remember I said before, especially when I was talking about the numerology, about how you'll have these intense emotions with the energy of Scorpio, yet the number 4 has this energy signature of logic, practicality, and stability even, right? that can be represented in the astrology of the full moon. Scorpio, like I said before, water sign, intense energy, but intense emotions, right? Think about the tides going in and out kind of violently, right? That is the Scorpio energy. That's where the moon is going to be. Whereas the sun is in Taurus. Taurus is fixed. Taurus is practical, right? The astrology of this full moon is this dichotomy between logic, practicality, and emotions. So if you feel like you're on an emotional seesaw during this full moon, that's probably why. Moon in Scorpio, sun in Taurus. Now, the axis of Scorpio and Taurus has a lot to do with resources. Scorpio has a lot to do with shared resources. Taurus has a lot to do with personal resources. Money, basically. So I wouldn't be surprised if money issues come up at this full moon. Perhaps the truth of your financial situation or the financial situation of a partner. But remember I said there's going to be this practical element to this full moon. So it may have to do with your job. It may have to do with money. It may have to do with assets, whether those assets are owned by you or they are owned jointly between you and someone else. Now, that may not be exactly how it plays out for everyone, although I believe that that's going to be sort of an underlying theme with this full moon. And then finally, I want to talk about Pluto, because the full moon is going to be square to Pluto in Aquarius. This is important because Pluto is one of the rulers of Scorpio. So this particular transit, full moon square Pluto, we're going to feel this very intensely. And the word that this particular transit evokes is transformation of a permanent and a profound kind. Now, Pluto in Aquarius is a whole thing. I did a whole video on it. So if you want to check that out, if you haven't already, here it is. And the link will be in the description box below. But this is going to be a whole thing. This is a new way of thinking. This is access to more information. We're in the information age, the age of Aquarius, and that's exactly where Pluto is. So our emotions may definitely be frustrated by this transformation. So Pluto in Aquarius is changing our minds, right? It's changing how we see things. It's getting us to break out the mold. It wants us to be free, rebellious, and think futuristically. Now, whatever comes to this let me back up. This sort of transformation is sort of happening in the background. It's a subtle transformation that's going to play out over the next 20 years. And then we have this sort of electric kind of situation with this full moon in Scorpio, where something comes to light. The truth of something comes to light, or something comes to a conclusion and sort of frustrates that transformation. It may bring up old wounds. It may bring up old habits that are getting in the way and that serve as obstacles to this transformation that's going on in the background. And so this full moon may be sort of a blip in time that is jarring, that's intense, that's emotional, that brings up the uglier side of a situation, the uglier side of a relationship, or maybe even the uglier side of you. Now understand that all of this is meant to serve as information so that you can continue on this path of transformation that Pluto in Aquarius is getting us to do. All right. So again, this full moon is going to be a little jarring, going to be emotional, seesaw between logic, practicality, and emotional intensity, right? However, the name of the game is transformation. And that's exactly what this particular full moon in Scorpio is getting you to do. All right. So now that we've talked about the numerology and the astrology, let's talk a little manifestation as it relates to this full moon in Scorpio. All right. So when we're talking about the full moon phase of the lunar cycle, this is the part of the lunar cycle that is all about total illumination, right? In the manifestation cycle, this is when things come to fruition. This is when you get to see and enjoy the fruits of your labor. So this part of the video is going to be super short. So when it comes to manifesting with this full moon in Scorpio, you don't. Full moons are all about observation. Full moons are showing you what work you've put in previously. So it's not a time to do things. It's more a time to observe, right? And your emotions will let you know perhaps what you've achieved, what has come to fruition, or perhaps what still stands in your way from things coming to fruition. Remember, Scorpio energy has a lot to do with our bad habits, the ugly side of things. And so if you're seeing these things, if these things are becoming illuminated at the time of the full moon, It means that these are the things that perhaps you need to relinquish, let go of, remove from your life in order for those manifestations to come to fruition. So again, this is going to be the time where you observe rather than set intentions or do anything else for that matter. That's why I love full moons. Full moons show you things. They show you how hard you've worked or maybe how hard you haven't worked. They've showed you perhaps still how far you have to go. Either way, full moon energy shows you where you are in the manifestation process. All right, so now let's get into some messages from spirit. And honey, they are definitely interesting. I have to be honest with you. I was definitely surprised by these messages as they relate to the full moon. I don't necessarily know that I was expecting anything specific, but the messages that came through were a lot more specific than I thought they would be and kind of surprising. All right, so let's get into it. First, it is cleanup time. Purification, cleansing, cleaning up a dirty space, reverence for what is sacred, especially love. So when I got this message, it was sort of like, I saw like a temple, and this temple was being swept. It was being cleaned. It was sort of being prepared for something beautiful, for like a celebration of sorts, right? So the theme of these messages is love, specifically intimate love, which surprised me because I didn't think that this would come up, but I guess this is something that the collective needs to hear at this time. So we are purifying perhaps our energetic fields, maybe even our bodies. We're purifying our temples for love. Interesting, right? Next, an emphasis on a sacred space or a physical temple. So for some of you, this could be like a religious space, or this could just be focusing on your temple, which is your body, right? This message evokes, I guess, thoughts about sex, right? And how your body is a temple, and how you should be very cautious and you should be very intentional with who you allow into your temple. All right. That's definitely a message that came through a couple of times. All right. Transformation and transmutation. Change and resistance that comes with that, right? Sort of that Sabian symbol I was talking about before, about how this violent sea is crashing against this steady rock, right? This transformation that may be frustrated by emotions and change, all right? And the resistance that comes with this transformation. Finding beauty in the process of doing dirty work. Okay. Finding beauty in the process of cleansing yourself, of cleansing your temple, finding beauty in processing deeply seated emotions, right? You have to find beauty, and not even just beauty, but appreciation for this process, no matter how dirty it is. Next, love, relationships, and soulmates, intimacy, vulnerability, bearing your soul, sharing your darkest secrets, and building a bond as strong as Gorilla Glue. That's exactly how they said it to me, right? Strong emphasis on partnership, specifically birds of a feather flocking together. And this is also part of a later message, but it's almost like this commonality that you share with someone is internal. It's latent. It's not necessarily what you're going to see on the surface. So even though you may be interacting with someone who may be very different than you, it's almost like on the inside, you two are cut from the same cloth, essentially. Someone who's a lot more like you than first meets the eye, and it's all under the surface. Okay. This next message threw me for a loop. And they have the same kinks as you, and not just sexual, right? It's these little idiosyncrasies that you thought only you have, but this person has also. Hence why there's something about this full moon that can really bring you closer to someone on a very intimate sort of level. Next, be optimistic about love and romance. Cast a wider net and be open to someone who isn't your usual type on the surface. Opposites may attract, but underneath it's all the same, all right? And that reiterates what I said before. Now, it's interesting because as I was getting this message, I was like, well, what about people who are with their soulmate already, right? A lot of what I received feels like it's for people who aren't linked up already, who maybe aren't married or who aren't yet in a committed relationship. And Spirit was like, this message is still the same. This could just deepen the bond between you and an existing partner. All right. Even though a lot of this sounds like it's meant for people who are single, who aren't coupled. Even if you are coupled, there's still this element of forming deeper, intimate bonds. Okay. Having a more expansive and or all-encompassing view or perception of what love is and what is considered beautiful. Being attracted to what you once thought was ugly. Okay. This speaks to vulnerability as well. Perhaps you had certain criteria in relationships that could have been a little more superficial, right? And I feel like you're going to be seeing a lot more of someone, and there's going to be this appreciation for the not so beautiful parts of them. Or maybe someone is appreciating the quote unquote dirty or ugly parts of you. And it changes your perception and your view of what you deem beautiful. Okay, beautiful becomes all encompassing. It's not just aesthetics. It's not just a nice feeling. It is the totality of things, both beautiful and ugly. Okay. Building up strength concerning love and intimacy. Understand that it is a process. And this speaks a lot to the sun currently being in Taurus at the time of this full moon. It's a process. It takes work. It isn't just a simple conversation and that's it. It's understanding the ugly parts of yourself or your partner or the not so beautifully aesthetic parts of a relationship. And that takes work. It takes processing, right? It's a build up. And again, it's just work. All of this is an inside job. It's creating from your subconscious. This requires you getting a handle on your emotions. And it also requires a bit of solitude Yet Spirit wanted me to, I keep forgetting the word that I'm trying to use, but Spirit wanted me to highlight the difference between solitude and loneliness. Solitude is, you being by yourself, right? You being fulfilled. Solitude comes from a place of abundance, whereas loneliness comes from a place of lack. In solitude, you are whole within yourself, right? And you can be by yourself physically, right? Loneliness requires lack. It focuses your intention on what you, or focuses your attention on what you are missing, what you are lacking, hence why you feel lonely, like you're missing something or someone. This particular full moon in Scorpio requires solitude. And that solitude requires you to, it doesn't require you, but it gives you the space to get a handle on your emotions, right? Because our emotions help to create our reality in a certain way, right? So to get a handle on your emotions, you need solitude. Spending time in solitude and working on yourself before, and before is in all caps, before intimacy is a must. This isn't the time where you just jump into something, completely without having done the inner work on yourself. Hence why solitude is a must at this time. And then finally, there is a practical element to all of this, which has been the underlying theme for this full moon in Scorpio generally. Figuring out how things will function / operate now that the truth has been revealed, okay? So now that you've formed this bond with someone, now that you've bared your soul, now that you see the real person, how are you going to make this relationship work practically? What steps are you going to take forward now that you know these things about each other? That's also the practical element of this. The thing that I got was, all right, now that we know this, like, what are we going to do with our relationship? Are we going to take it to the next level? Are we going to move in together? Are we going to get married? Are we going to commingle our finances? Are we going to buy something together? Go into business together? There's a sliver of those practical kind of issues and situations that may present themselves with this full moon in Scorpio, right? So like I said, These messages were nothing that I expected, but they are definitely profound and interesting. All right, my loves. So that concludes this video on the full moon in Scorpio. I sincerely hope that you were able to get at least one important piece of information that you can use going forward. For information on all of my products and services, you can find that either tagged to the video or linked in the description box below. Thank you so much for tuning in. I wish you nothing but the best for this upcoming full moon in Scorpio, and I will see you in my next video. Take care.